Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sanctified Hoodoo. I am Ro. And before we get started, I declare I speak under divine law. This message is not mine, it is governed, sealed, and delivered only to those lawfully assigned. With that being said, this today's teaching is Sanctified Root, the origin of my gift. This is a foundational teaching for the remnant rising in clean gifts under divine law. And let's face it, a lot of us are rising into clean gifts. We are discarding the mixture, we're discarding occult practices, and we're stepping into our gifts under the divine law, and we're serving the Most High God, Yah. So this is about the way our blood, this is the blood speaks first. So our blood speaks first. Spiritual inheritance and lineage. This is the theme that I'm teaching today. I'll have more after, but this is today's teaching. Before I was ever taught, I was called. Before I ever learned the language of the veil, the Most High gave me ears to hear and eyes to see. I didn't go looking for this path. This path came looking for me, plain and simple. And when it did, it found me already marked by fire because I was ready. Let me be clear, okay, about something. Very clear, extremely clear. I did not wake up one day and choose to walk between worlds. I didn't name myself a seer or a veil walker. I was born into this appointment. What I carry was given, not taken. I didn't take anything. What I know was revealed to me, not conjured. I'm not a conjurer. I don't conjure. I've never conjured. Jeremiah 1:5, one of my favorite verses, Bible verses, where God says, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou comest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So just to be clear, my authority comes from the Most High God, Yah. I don't operate under New Age laws or spirit contracts. I serve under divine law. That means there are boundaries to my gift. There are places I will not go unless the Most High God, Yah, sends me. There are spirits I will not engage unless the Spirit of God permits it. This is not free-range spirituality. This is a consecrated inheritance. And there is accountability for those who touch the veil. Again, there is accountability for those who touch the veil. Okay? Some of us were born with the assignment of watching the gates. And that's me. I have been assigned, and I was assigned to watch the gates. We stand where others fear to walk, not because we want to be powerful, but because we are responsible. I carry the charge of a gatekeeper. That means I don't just see, I discern, I judge, and I guard. I know when something is clean or unclean. I know when something is sent by God or pretending to be light. I do not, let me repeat, I do not channel the dead. I listen when clean ancestors are permitted to speak under heaven's authority. And I do not open anything. The Spirit of God opens what he chooses. Just as in Ezekiel 44:23, they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Okay? The women in my bloodline whispered what they couldn't say aloud. Okay? My maternal, my matriarchs, my great-great-grandmother especially, carried sacred knowledge and silence. She was a healer. She knew how to work the herbs. I mean, she was a healer. She was a woman who could have passed white if she wanted to, but never did. She stood on the fact that she was a black woman. My ancestral lineage is Melungeon. If you do not know what Melungeon is, it's specifically those of us here in the Appalachian Mountains. That's Appalachian, it's Appalachian. We are a mixture of black, indigenous, Scott Irish, and for some people Dutch. That's who we are. I know my lineage and I know my line. I know who I am. I'm a triracial mix. On my paternal side, my father's side of the family, is mostly black and indigenous, and I know that for a fact. At a time when I know a lot of black people are saying we're indigenous to this land, some of us are actually indigenous to this land, but I know exactly who I come from. I know the line of which I come from. I know when they were removed out of Texas and moved to Oklahoma. So I digress. I only say that because, you know, you've got a lot of Native Americans who say that what we speak is false. Well, some of us do have mixed heritage. And I'll just leave that right there. I'm not arguing about nothing in my bloodline that I know for a fact that you have no idea. And I make no apologies. But I move on. My gift didn't start with me. I am the daughter of women who carried sacred knowledge in secret. I come from the line of Molly. Again, my great-great-grandmother who could have passed for white, but she chose to walk as black, like I said. That was an act of resistance, and that was a testimony of covenant right there, okay? So don't miss that. Again, like I said, I was born Melungeon, born of root and river, of black, indigenous, and Scottish Irish blood. I did not pick this mixture. It was picked for me by God. And it is from that bloodline that the gift flows. Not all of them clean, but the righteous ones remembered. Isaiah 58:12 says, and they that shall build of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up foundations of many generations. And again, that's what I'm here to do. The women in my bloodline whispered when they couldn't say what they couldn't say out loud. They could not speak of what they could do. My grandmother Molly worked the roots. My mother remembers her, and she was a healer. And many people came where she lived at in the mountains, Tazewell, Tennessee, and they came and they were healed by her. They got healing. She worked the roots. She was a root worker. She was hoodoo. And it is from that bloodline that this gift flows, like I said. Many of my matriarchal line was silenced by the church. They were silenced by religious men. And to keep themselves safe, they hid. They hid who they were. They hid their gifts. They hid what God had given them, because people like to accuse people of being witches and performing witchcraft when in fact they were doing nothing. They knew how to make the herbal medicines. They knew how to heal, right? They knew how to work the root. They knew how to work. They knew how to work with the power of the Most High. And because what people don't understand, they condemn. And two, in my line, you had a lot of people that moved away. and forgot their black and indigenous roots because it was easier to pass as white. And my grandmother has a lot of uncles and cousins that left that area so that they could live free. Can I fault them? No. But them doing that further placed a stitching of mouths closed. It caused our bloodline to be quiet. It caused gifts to be lost. It calls for a shutting off from your spiritual line. And that's what I do here. I'm rooted in bloodline, okay? Let me tell you now that what I do is not witchcraft. I don't cast spells. I don't work charms. I don't use spirits to get what I want. I don't do any of that, okay? I pray. I anoint. I speak the word. I walk by spirit. I build altars in righteousness. And I only move when God gives me permission to move. If he says be silent, I'm silent. If he says move, I move. What I do is sanctified hoodoo. It's rooted in my bloodline. Accountable to scripture. Cleansed by the Most High and sealed under divine law. And for a long time, people, women like me, like my matriarchs and my family on my mother's side, my maternal line, we were dreamers. Some of you guys, your people were dreamers, oil makers, midwives, watchers. And they have been whispered about but never heard. But now the matriarchs are rising and you can feel it. We're not here to build platforms. We are here to rebuild our altars. We are here to remind a generation that God still speaks. So I speak because it's time, because the bones remember, and because the Most High has loosed my voice. They covered their power so that they could survive. I walk uncovered for purpose. My generation has a spiritual permission to walk in what they had to hide. Did you hear that? We have the permission to walk in what they had to hide. 13:13 on the clock. We can walk out what they had to hide. I've been chosen to complete what they began, but I honor them in that. Okay? And I honor them in that. And the spiritual, the phrase, the blood speaks first, reveals a spiritual truth. Before we choose our spiritual path, our bloodline has already spoken on our behalf. In the heavenly realm, lineage, calling, and assignments are printed into a person's spirit through their ancestral record. Our walk is a continuation of what has been declared in the heavens. And if you read Hebrews 12:24, it says, to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. What that means is Abel's blood cried out for justice after murder. And you can see that in Genesis 4:10. While Christ's blood speaks of redemption and covenant, your blood, my blood, whatever, may carry trauma, pain, or power. But under Christ, it can be sanctified for divine purpose. Inheritance doesn't begin at your birth, okay? It begins with what your ancestors carried, whether that was sacred or defiled. Let me say that again. Inheritance doesn't begin at your birth. It begins with what your ancestors carried, whether that's sacred or defiled. So, lineage is not race, it's spiritual record. While the world classifies people by race or ethnicity, God reads by record. Spiritual lineage is about covenant. It's about assignment and what flows through your spiritual DNA. This includes roles like, when I say roles, ROLES, like intercessor, prophets, gatekeepers, or healers. And if you look at Romans 9 and 7, Romans 9 chapter 7 through 8 verses, it says, neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. Okay? And Galatians 3:29 says, if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to his promise. So, my Belungian roots and the decision for my great-great-grandmother to claim her blackness at a time where it was safer and easier for you to pass as white, okay? And the heritage of priesthood within my blood are part of my spiritual record. These things are encoded spiritually, not just genetically. So God's inheritance, it flows through obedience and alignment. It does not through race. All right, let me say that again. God's inheritance flows through obedience and alignment, not race. So your spiritual inheritance can be holy or cursed. Your spiritual inheritance can be both holy and both cursed. Okay? Some inheritance are clean. Your gift, your callings, and your mantles. Others are cursed. Witchcraft, addiction, trauma. Both can transfer through blood. Your role is to discern what is to be received and what is to be cut off. If you read Exodus 34th chapter in the 7th verse, you'll read that visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and to the fourth generation. In Lamentations 5 and 7, it states, our fathers have sinned, right, and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. Generational curses do exist, and they show up as like repeated behaviors in a bloodline, like oppression, broken relationships, miscarriages, spiritual warfare. Recognizing a pattern is the first step to breaking it. Recognizing a pattern is the first step to breaking it. Let's just say that in someone's spiritual line, there is an anger issue. There's a root to that. There's a curse to that. Why is the anger there? You inherit what isn't challenged. You inherit that. If I don't confront whatever generational curses, I'm just going to pass that on to my kids. And then they're going to repeat it. And it's going to keep being repeated throughout my bloodline until somebody says the buck stops with me and I'm going to do the work. Somebody's got to break the generational curses. Somebody has to do the rituals to break everything off. Okay? And I'm just reminded that I have the spiritual permission to walk in what they had to hide. I will not hold my mouth or my tongue back in fear of what anybody says to me. I've always said, ain't none of my business what somebody else thinks about me. Ain't none of my business what else somebody says about me. That's got nothing to do with me and everything to do with them and projection. Because people do project that. The matriarchal rise is not a rebellion. It's just simply fulfillment, y'all. There's a rise of priestesses, of mothers, and matriarchal leaders. And these leaders are not to replace men, but to restore what was buried. Women are not rebelling, right? Women are simply rising under mandate. Psalm 68:11 says, the Lord gave the word, great was the company of those that published it. And Joel 2:28 specifically says, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. We are simply rising in prophetic and priestly offices, and it's not rebellion against divine order, it's alignment, plain and simple. And this is with the prophetic timetable. When men are out of place and, they're not doing what they're supposed to, God will raise a Deborah, a Mary, a Miriam, or an Anna. And all of those positions I just mentioned, these were all assigned. These people were not self-appointed. They were assigned by God to do what it is they walked in. That was their assignment. So, me inheriting the mantle, I do that without idolatry, meaning I don't worship my ancestors. I do not channel. I do not conjure them. I inherit clean assignments and I cut unclean ties. That's what I do. I inherit clean assignments and I cut the unclean ties. And that's what I've done on both sides. Because the blood can pass down mantles, right? But only Christ can determine their use. Clean ancestral veneration is about honoring what was lawful. It's never veneration in the form of worship. Because first off, you are the living altar that God uses to fulfill holy bloodlines, okay? So mantles are to be worn in obedience, not flaunted in pride. The seal of divine law must be placed on every ancestral gift that you receive, and I cannot express this enough. The seal of divine law must be placed on every ancestral gift you receive, or else it can open you up to things that nobody should be opened up to. Okay? The blood has spoken. What is sealed in me will rise in divine timing. What is unlawful will fall away. I walk in inheritance, not in idolatry. They covered me. Them keeping silent was their way of surviving. Again, so many women in our line have kept silent. You remember the Salem witch trials? That kind of energy. That's why a lot of women stayed silent, was because of things like that happen. You have men that propose to speak for God, and they didn't speak for God. They didn't even have the Spirit of God to discern Him. Because if they did, they wouldn't have been burning nobody at the stake. And so my physical and spiritual traits that run in my maternal line is healing. It's working the root and healing other people. That's what's been passed down on my maternal side. My paternal side is the gift to speak to the dead, but under divine law. Only clean ancestors, not just my clean ancestors, but others' clean ancestors, not just mine. And regardless of what church people think, there are, believe it or not, the ancestors have access to the throne. The righteous ancestors can plead on your behalf. The church would tell you don't. It ain't like that, but the Most High God says otherwise. Once you begin to study the word, scriptures for yourself, you'll begin to see, and God will reveal and start removing the scales from your eyes, and will give you understanding, and will give you visions, and will show you if you ask Him. That everything will be shown to you. And we're going to get into deeper studies. This is just simply me giving the origin of my gift and who I am. That's what this is. Right? This is me telling you why I am, who I am, what my work is, how I'm sanctified. Right? I don't call myself. I've been called. And I work for Him. God appoints me. And I don't work with any other deity. And my clean ancestors, there's a protocol to how they are approached and how they are venerated. And we will get into that. But I will tell you, one time when I was reading, just doing general readings, and I'd get, because I'm not going to lie, I thought you had to get on like YouTube and Facebook and do these. At the time, I think I was doing Facebook, going live on Facebook, and opening myself, because I didn't know any better, because I was young into it, opening myself and doing readings, and then trying to hijack from a spirit trying to, come at me. And that I didn't like that feeling at all. And if I chose that path, I could have went that path, but I knew that path just led to destruction. Because you leave yourself to be open and jumped on by spiritual things that are more powerful than you are, and your protection is only as good as, right? So your ultimate protection is your covering. And your covering is when you operate within divine law. There's a reason why you shouldn't forcibly open your third eye. There's a reason why you don't delve into practices that leave you exposed, because you can run into something so extremely powerful that will totally take you over. And I had something that happened, like it tried, but it couldn't. Because even then, I was protected. Even in my error, when I first started walking, my spiritual walk, learning who I was, learning my gifts and my abilities, though I started off in error, ERROR, the Most High God, Yah, still had mercy, compassion, and love for me, and let me walk that walk. He wanted me to walk that walk, so I would be here at this point now. Some things you can't learn save you walk them by yourself, right? So there's some things that you have to walk even in error, but you are divinely protected from major harm, because God is teaching you a lesson. He's allowing you to see, right, what needs to be seen, to give you a greater understanding of who you are, what you were called to do, and why we don't do things, and why sometimes we do this and we don't do this, right? So I don't conjure at all. I don't I'm not into necromancy. And I know when I say I talk to the dead, I'm legally allowed by God to speak to the dead, but that comes with rules. And it just what it comes with rules. Because he is the first, everybody else falls below him. And that's just the way it is. I'm not a necromancer. I don't go and I don't wake people up. Okay? I only deal with clean ancestors. And when I say clean ancestors, and that's the ancestors I work with my clean ancestors. I had to do a ritual where I had to detach myself from my unclean ancestors, because your unclean ancestors can hinder you. They can hinder your walk here. They can come up against you, especially if you're just invoking them and you just got a whole altar open and it ain't sealed, and your altar is open to your ancestors and you don't even know who you're venerating and who you're giving food to. And that's a whole other teaching that we're going to get into about proper veneration of ancestors. I know you probably thought fixing them a plate of food and putting on your altar. Nope, not in Sanctified Hoodoo. You don't. There's a way to venerate your clean ancestors. There's a way to do that righteously, because your ancestors are not gods and not a god. You serve the Most High God, and Him only shall you serve, period. In Sanctified Hoodoo, that's it. We serve under divine law, and we don't put our ancestors on a pedestal and worship them. We don't worship them. We don't feed them because they don't need food. Not once in the scripture do you see anything about our ancestors being fed. And besides that, feeding your ancestors can open a door to familiar spirits posing as your ancestors coming through. So you open a whole other door. And a lot of people outside of Sanctified Hoodoo and just work hoodoo or mixture hoodoo, they're not going to agree with anything that I'm saying when it comes to ancestor veneration or burning ancestor money, which you don't do either. However, I'm talking to those that I'm lawfully assigned, that you're assigned to be here. You coming out of mixture. You're not under mixture. You're not under the veil of mixture anymore. You're under sanctification. You've been set apart. You are called. And you've been set apart, and you're holy. That's who I'm speaking to. I'm not speaking to people who practice mixture and who will continue to practice mixture. Like, there's certain herbs that you have to pray over appropriately before you use them. Part of practicing hoodoo, which is not a religion, first off, it is a blood-coded survival system. Like, this is honored. This is a closed practice. There's a lot of things I will not share because it is a closed practice, and I believe in gatekeeping and honoring my ancestors, period. I don't share things that how can I say it? I won't share things that are not to be shared. I'm not going to do that. Right? I won't do that. Certain workings that are divine, I will not, because some of it's for my lineage, it's for my line, and I won't release that. It stays within my line. It stays within my lineage. It stays within my ancestors, right? So certain things you have to deal with within your bloodline to break it, and that comes by ritual, that you have to release it, right? It has to be released. You have to call it out, you have to reject it, and you have to submit yourself under divine law. And a lot of things in our bloodlines, our ancestors have done that, or made pacts that you have to break, blood pacts that you have to break. You have to break those pacts where people have maybe promised you to a certain spirit. You have to break them yourself. You can only do that properly under the throne of God. That's it. No other. So even when I was not walking truly according to what I should have been walking, God had mercy, He had grace, and He allowed me to learn without getting myself hurt out here in these spiritual streets. I was taught a lot. I was taught there's a lot of people who will just be out here doing baneful hexing magic just because they can. I've had that happen. It never hit me. It never hit me. But I was able to, like, I always get dreams when people are doing stuff. So it's always like known. So I'm always ahead of the curve, and I know I'm protected, right? Um, so somebody might question, um, how spirit confirmed my ancestral walk through dreams or my altar work. Um, one, I've had so many experiences. I really can't. Okay, so my first one was the first time I ever got a Moldavite. And if you know anything about Moldavite, it's very strong. Okay? Moldavite is uh, one of transformation, and it does transform. It actually allows you to walk the veil. I'm allowed to walk the veil because I've always been allowed to walk the veil between worlds. Like, I can walk between worlds because that's my assignment. I'm a gatekeeper. I'm a keeper of the veil. I guard it. So it was an easy transition. The Moldavite just, for lack of a better word, just thrust me into it because I had no idea. But in that veil, in that ancestral realm that I was in, I met my grandfather that was murdered when my father was a child. My grandfather was in the Navy, and he was stabbed to death and left in a ditch to die. I saw his wife, my grandmother, who died around 2014. And I saw them, and I asked her a question. I said, "Where's Jesus?" Because I literally astral traveled to where they were. And she said, "It doesn't work like that here," which further solidifies nobody's in heaven right now, right? So there's a place. We'll get into that as well. So but we won't get into that. I'll just say there's Sheol, there is Gehenna, and I think I'm missing one, but I digress. We'll touch on that. We'll get into that teaching at another time because that will get me off track if I go off. So, and then I came back and I was just in tears and I was crying. I was like, "Wow, this is wonderful!" Like, which sent me further down the spiritual path. And I'm reading and I'm able to just know. I've always been a knowing person, clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. I'm all these things, and I would do readings, and sometimes I could sense dark energies behind people. I could see or sense spirits, not like my physical eyes, but I just knew what something was attached to somebody. And I've always known, like, even growing up, so-called friends I've known who's really like me and who really hasn't. If they're seeing this video, some of them might be surprised, but I've known they were fake since day one. And the reason I've known that because I've been shown in dreams. I had a friend of mine that I grew up with who died, I want to say last year or the year before last. I think it was 2022. I can't remember. Anyway, I've known her since middle school. We were really good friends. And when she got married, moved to Florida, married this man, had kids, but he did her very wrong, right? He ended up cheating on her, did something to her mental, and she got hooked on drugs, right? So she ended up coming back here to Tennessee, and I saw her one day, and I said, "Hey, I didn't know you was here." And her energy just felt different. Like, her whole being was just different. And come to find out, she was heavy on meth. Me being me, you my sister, not literally, but she's my sister as far as I'm concerned. I love her like she was friends for years. She's my sis, and I'm going to help her. But you can only help people for so long, right? And you can't make people change. And I promise there's a story to this. So, I would pick her up. I would bring her food. I would make sure, even though I couldn't bring her into my home now. I wasn't doing that because I couldn't do that. Because I'm married, I have a daughter, and I can't bring that into my house. But, because she chose to be out here in the street, she chose to do drugs, but I still have love, empathy, and compassion for my sis, for my friend. And I would bring her food, I would bring her water, I would, take her places. And then one night she called me, or she sent me a video, and I didn't answer her because I fell asleep. And so the next day I woke up, I guess she got offended because I didn't answer her and she blocked me. And I was like, well, I guess she didn't talk to me no more. She just blocked me. She unfriended me. I was like, okay, cool. Well, she's a drug addict. I mean, what would you expect? Very sensitive with what was going on, because she flipped like that, like mentally, like she would flip a switch that quick. So I was like, well, I just pray for it. Nothing I can do about it. And kept it pushing. So speed through all that, and about a couple of years ago, she got sick and died. Well, I didn't know that she had passed. I believe it was an overdose. And I was asleep, and I had this dream, and she was in my dream. Now remember, I told you I'm a veil walker. I walk between worlds. I can speak to the dead. I've always been able to do this. So she's in my dream, and she doesn't say anything. And I said her name. I won't say it here. I said her name. I said, what are you doing here? I said, you don't even speak to me. I said, you haven't even spoken to me. You're mad at me. And she was just following behind me. Okay. That was strange. So I wake up. She just wanted to sit with me. And I said, I guess we cool again. I wasn't understanding why she was in my dream. I didn't know she was there because she was on her deathbed at the moment she came to me. She wasn't quite dead yet. I figured that out by timing and Facebook posts. She hadn't died yet, but she was close to death. She was in between. She was in the in-between. And so I was like, okay. The next time she showed up in my dream, she came to show me who a friend, quote unquote, a friend really was. And she showed me that this friend that it was always a group of us, a solid group that hung together. This one particular girl, she's always had the spirit, like I could feel a spirit of envy and jealousy on this one girl all the time. Even to this day, I still feel it. Unless if she watched this video, she would never know, because I don't reveal what I be given in dreams. I know when somebody's peeking in. I know when someone's curious. That's how I know. Like, I know that I know that I know. And I'm going to tell you some more about this quote-unquote friend. So, she shows me that she's always talked trash about me. She's never liked me. She's very condescending. Cool. And she showed me this in a dream. And the last dream I had was her. She came by, we talked, and I said, hey, let's go for a ride in my car. And we rode off in the sunset, and that's the last time I saw her in my dream. That's it. That is the last time I'm going to cry. That is the last time I saw her, and that's when she died. Like, she came to me 3 times. One, because she was telling me, I'm sorry, I love you. I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm sorry I acted like I did. Right? And she came back to tell me who my friend really was, to show me this person. Now, the friend in question that we all have, that she was showing me, that we all this core group of friends, this one girl, she's loud, right? She's a woman now. She's loud and she's always been loud, right? And so I had a reading, ooh, a while. It's been like 2 or 3 years ago that I had a reading, and the reader was like, "Hey, there's a girl there's somebody that you need to leave alone. Like, she really don't like you like that." And I was like, I wonder who that could be. Like, they really don't like me like that, right? And I told my daughter, I said, well, I only speak to this one person, and I speak to her on the phone. I don't hang out with her. And that's what was getting me, because the reader that I said, that who said this, she's like, well, you know her, you hang out with her. We didn't hang. I only talked to her on the phone, okay? First of all. So my daughter's like, I bet it's so-and-so. I said, I don't know, we'll see. But it came out to be so-and-so, that same friend, right? Had a second reading done by a totally other different person. And she said, girl, you need to do a spiritual cleanse. She said, you done talked to somebody. And she said, I can tell you right now that girl don't like you. She doesn't like you, and she's got attachments. She's got parasitic attachments, right? And I said, I only talked to her on the phone. She said, I don't care if you talked to her. This is when I didn't know no better, I don't care if you just talked to her on the phone. Those things can jump, even on the phone. You're going to have to do, I had to do an egg cleanse. I had to do a spiritual bath. I had to do all this stuff only because I talked to that girl. Only because I talked to her. But yet, she calls herself a Christian. Okay? And even God showed me in dreams her true face. So I digress. Go back to this reading. She's like, she don't like you. She ain't never liked you. She's always been jealous of you, and she's always been envious of you. I was like, okay. Makes sense. She even messed with my brother. So I said, okay, that makes sense. Because after I talked to her, I just felt like I was real tired. I wanted to sleep all the time. And she said, that's because whatever she had on her jumped on you because you're a light, and it wanted to feed on you. So I had to get rid of it through this spiritual cleansing, this spiritual ritual I had to do. And in Sanctified Hoodoo, we do spiritual baths too. Let me just let that out there. We do spiritual cleansing baths because they're necessary. Okay, so one day I had a dream. Here she shows up again in my dream. Same girl. And it was because she was being nosy. She wanted to know what I was doing. Like I said, the Most High God always lets me know. Even my ancestors at that time let me know who she was. Okay? So, I had to pick her up because in that moment they were telling me that she was going to try to enter into my marriage and break my marriage up. And in my dream, I'm still a dark divine high priestess, which I am, right? Because that's what I do. I'm a veil walker. I picked her up by her neck, and I said, I am a dark divine high priestess. You do not mess with me. And I slammed her to the ground, and I stomped on her in the spirit. Okay? She went away for a little while. And then I want to say when was it? This was about, I think this was this week. Yeah, this was only like maybe this last incident. This was probably, yeah, this is past week. Let's see here. So this person, I believe this person saw my first video introducing this channel as Sanctified Hoodoo and why it's called Sanctified Hoodoo and that I will be teaching, right? And this person went from there, right? And I'm going to see, hold on. There was a Facebook post that she posted on the wall. I won't say her name, but if she's listening to this, you know exactly who you are. And I don't address people. I don't care what you say about me. I don't care what you think about me because it ain't none of my business. I stay in my lane and I mind my business. But this is what she said. Stop teaching that sorcery, magic, tarot card reading, palm reading, and fortune telling is of God. It's called witchcraft. And these are all exclamation points after the statement. There are no good witches and bad witches. Stop poisoning the minds of the lost. You will reap what you sow. And if you take this post offensively, all I can say is my job was done, because the truth is offensive to those that go against the truth. I said what I said. Now that was her being passive aggressive on Facebook. All right? Because, and I'm going to tell you, this is what people like her do, okay? When she says stop teaching that sorcery and magic and tarot card, this is why I don't take offense to it, right? Because that's not what I'm teaching. I'm teaching discernment, sanctification, spiritual law, and cleansing of what was previously lawless. But when someone walks in confusion or mixture, they see all spiritual gifts as witchcraft because they don't know what it means to be called and clean under God. I don't care what they say. She says there are no good witches and bad witches. Well, this is true, but I'm not a witch, right? I never claimed that title, all right? I've made it very clear that I do not conjure. I'm not a root worker under mixture, right? I work the root. I am a root worker, but I'm not a root worker under mixture. I steward under divine law. And it's clear that she cannot distinguish because her foundation is built on fear and tradition instead of truth. And then her little stop poisoning the minds of the lost. That's a projection. Her own spiritual state is likely was producing this level of aggression. This is not rebuke. This is accusation. Especially when she says you will reap what you sow. This is a spiritual curse masked as righteousness, y'all. I'm pointing this out for a reason. That line alone tells you what spirit is speaking. When a person speaks out of divine alignment, their own words become a trap. As in Psalm 7:16 says, his mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealings shall come down upon his own plate. And then the coup de grace, she said, I said what I said. And finality that does not come from authority, but from ego and resentment. That's what that was, right? So I don't defend. I don't clap back. I don't owe her or anybody else a debate. But I tell you what her post revealed about her. It revealed her true heart. And I just simply said a prayer and kept it pushing, right? Some people you can't, and this is what you're going to run into when you do Sanctified Hoodoo. You're going to run into these people. All right? This is the kind of mindset, the church, that you are going to run into. And I know that stepping into my mantle, my God-given spiritual authority is going to draw opposition. Not because I'm wrong, but because I'm now visible. Like I've crossed a threshold from hidden preparation into a public walk. And those walking in religious form without spiritual function will always react. That's how you know. So this kind of attack is a confirmation for me, really, that what I'm doing is piercing a spiritual resistance. When you are aligned under divine law and start operating publicly, truth agitates mixture. Your attacker's words came as soon or will come as soon as you affirm your identity publicly. And it happened as soon as I launched Sanctified Hoodoo. And you know what? The Most High God said it would. My ancestors, my clean ancestors, said the attacks were going to be coming. This is how you're going to know that you've been confirmed. That's confirmation. You know, Luke 6:26 says, "Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets." Ooh, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Matthew 5:11. So the backlash is not our defeat or my defeat. It's our evidence. I am walking in my matriarchal mantle and standing in a role that many before me had to hide, but I refuse to hide. And I'm just not going to do it. The irony of it, though, y'all, is it's spiritual. What she did is spiritual cowardice disguised as righteousness. When someone carries real conviction from the Most High, they speak in truth and love. It's face to face. It's spirit to spirit. It's not in public. It's not going to be a spectacle meant to stir strife. What I witnessed, it was not prophetic boldness. It was performative religion, reacting to the authority in me that her spirit cannot counterfeit. Because the girl got my number. She didn't text. She didn't call. Or then she didn't say, or she didn't text, she didn't call, she didn't pray for me. She broadcasted in all caps, not to correct me, but to control the narrative and spiritually undermine my assignment. That is not correction, y'all. That is a Jezebel tactic, cloaked in church language. That's what that was. And that just further shows me who cannot come with me in this next elevation. Not because I'm hateful, but because I'm obedient. Like, that's the Jezebel tactic that you're going to run up against working sanctified hoodoo. When you work under God's law, Yah's law, right? And it's not only working under divine law, it's loving the Most High God. It's walking. It's knowing that Christ is your Savior. It's knowing that you are covered in the blood and you are sealed in the blood of Christ. Come hell or high water, you know who you belong to. You know you don't mix, right? There's no mixture. There's no Santeria here. There's no voodoo luas here. It's simply you and the Most High and what He allows. And there's certain things that He permits for those that He's called to specific mantles. That's not for everybody. And some of these people, you know, that's what they do. And she felt that that's what she's going to do. I haven't talked to her since. You know, I saw it. Like, my oldest daughter, which actually is her cousin, believe it or not. My daughter and her are cousins. My daughter's father, they share relatives. But my daughter blocked her because she don't like her spirit. My daughter's a Pisces and she can, that girl, you want to talk about discernment off the chain. She knows when it ain't right. But the fact that, I mean, I'm just scrolling through my Facebook, and I don't be on Facebook like that. And I wasn't offended. I was just like, dang. I was like, really? And because I know things, like there's a girl that my oldest daughter's 31. So there's a girl my oldest daughter would have befriended. And she was like, you already, you know, stuff was going on, personal stuff in her life. And she's like, my mom reads. And if you want a reading, my mom will tell you the truth. It's going to hurt because it's always the truth. But, you know, you can get a reading. I'll tell her or whatever. And she said, I gave her your number. But What my daughter told me, she was like, yeah, my friend, let's call her Michelle. Her friend Michelle has said, yeah, I met, let's call her Jezebel, because it's so fitting. My friend, well, I don't even call her a friend. Let's just call her a leech at this point. Just somebody. We'll just call her Jezebel. I'll just say friend for the sake of being telling the story. She calls me sissy, but this tells you how much she thinks about me, though. She'll want to sell me a purse, though, but I digress. She'll want to hang out with me, right? But I'm evil. But okay. So she told my daughter, her friend Michelle, that my daughter was hanging out with. She said, "Well, Jezebel said that I'm good people, but what I do is the devil's work. That I'm in demonic stuff because I read tarot." But yet you in my face and you calling my phone, or you like whatever. I digress. Like, I've known this all along, though, because I've been told in dreams. So her speaking it is nothing new because I already knew it. She's just finding out now. She sees this video that I know. And I've known the whole time. I've never been stupid. Ever. I've always been on top of it. Right? Because that's just how I work. People be in your face and smiling and think you don't know. And I'd be knowing. I've always known. And then I just cut you off. Because at this point, I'm too grown to be messing with people for them not to know what they do. And then, she, like I said, she knows what I do. She saw my video about how I'm going to be teaching. So I'm pretty sure she'll probably see this video when I'm done. Good for you for watching it all the way through. If you have something to say to me, then I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered. I'm just using this as an example of people that you're going to run into, even your so-called friends and family, have the Jezebel spirit. Because it's a tactic. Because anything done, if somebody wants to be corrective or they think they're correcting you, they're not going to come at you like that. And I use that as an example because it's a true example. And God gave it to me. He brought it to my memory. And I haven't unfriended her or nothing because I don't pull no weight because that's not who I am. Like I said, it ain't none of my business what she thinks about me. I know who I am. The most God knows who I am. He knows the mantle that he's called me to. And at the end of the day, she's going to be held accountable, not me. Because I'm walking like I'm supposed to be. And I have an aunt like that who calls herself a prophetess. And when I first started reading, she was the same way. Oh, this is bad, this is this. But like I said, even in my error, God had compassion, grace, and mercy. You understand what I'm saying? He had the love. He knew the ending of the journey. He knew that I would be at this point in my life to help other people, to teach other people the right way, right? That a lot of the things that we learned broke spiritual law. We're taught to break this, to break spiritual law, to be illegal, and that comes from the book of Enoch. The Watchers that came down, they taught, this, because if you don't know the book of Enoch, you need to read it. But there's a reason why God didn't want certain things done. Like the reason why you don't access the veils through like yoga, chakras and things like that, because it carries spiritual weight that a lot of people aren't prepared for. You have to have a certain calling and a mantle to carry it, because you have to have that divine covering. Oh, by making sense. So a lot of religious people don't have a true knowing of how it operates in the spiritual at all. They don't realize that. They don't realize the ancestral realm exists, right? So, the heavens. Read the book of Enoch. We'll get deeper into that. But I was shown my ancestors anointed my feet in my dream. Yes, they came forth and anointed me in the church. The bottom of the soles of my feet, they appointed me. And my ancestors were there, black, white, and indigenous. They were all there. Those clean ancestors were already there for me. And this happened like 2 years ago. Didn't click then. All right. I was taken to the ancestral room another time with one of the matriarchs. One of the celestial beings that sit under God and serve Him. And I know the difference. So, I've just had so many things that have already been done in the spirit where I've been appointed, and I'm not running from that. I don't care what religious spirit, Jezebel spirit that other people operate under. It ain't got nothing to do with me. And you'll have a lot of people that operate under this system, but they don't, y'all. For someone to speak that way about me, about that, it's definitely a Jezebel spirit, especially when I know what's happening now in their life and what they're into now. That's all I'm going to say. So, they hold no weight, is what I'm going to say. They hold no weight. And you're going to run into people like that. And then my aunt is the same way. Like, this Most High God gave me a dream about my aunt. And she is my father's sister. And I had a dream. When I had that dream, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this is when I really came out with doing my tarot reading, when I first had my own Facebook page and I was doing live Facebook videos. So it's been a while. And she found out about it. And she was my only thing I was afraid to come out about who I really was, because of who she was. And she was a very integral part of my life. And even then, like, I valued my aunt's opinion. I valued what she said. You know, she fasted, she prayed. And in my eyes, she was a very extremely spiritual, powerful woman. But then she would speak so much in my life that I could hear the voice of God saying, "Why are you listening to her?" Like, it was like she was projecting onto us, her nieces and nephews. She was projecting on us what she wanted us to be, right? And not what God wanted us to be. Like it was so bad. When I got remarried, she didn't want me to wear my husband, and she was speaking about my husband that I have now, and I knew that she would try to, do something, pregnant, whatever. You can't tell people what we're doing. So I just told her, "Oh, we're not together no more. We broke up," because I don't like people in my business. Next thing you know, I popped up married, and she didn't even know it. She felt some type of way because I never told her I was married. Because it was the spirit that she came with that she would try to ruin what I had. And this is what I'm saying. You can't let people dictate your life. And so I began to move away from her. And so when I how can I say it? When I began to read and I began on this spiritual journey, and I enjoy reading for other people. I did enjoy it, but I just didn't do it right. You got to be careful. You have to be assigned to work with that tarot. You have to be under divine law. Like, there's a script. You just don't pick up the cards. You just don't do it. There's a lot to learn. But I digress. So she pretty much ripped me off, and she's always talking something bad about me, or she's always got something like to say. And so one day I had a dream, right? In that dream, my aunt was in it and she had black eyes. And it kind of freaked me out. I was like, oh Lord, what is this? Like, really what? Like, it was my aunt. And she had black eyes. And, at first you think, black eyes, if you watch Supernatural, you think it's evil. And she was one that was extremely critical of me when I began this journey and started reading tarot. But when I had a dream that was sitting at a bar, and she turned around and she showed up, her eyes were black. And black eyes often symbolize absence of truth, deception, or spiritual blindness. Again, she's got a Jezebel spirit. She might not believe it. And when someone, or when you see like the black eyes on someone who claims righteousness, it usually indicates hypocrisy, a false authority, or a spirit is operating behind them, using their religious position to accuse, to silence, or block you. Not necessarily evil, like in the Hollywood sense, but it can reveal a spiritual compromise where someone is claiming God's name, but aligning with accusation or operating from pride, control, or fear, rather than divine discernment. Okay? So prophetess by name means nothing. Prophetess by fruit is what heaven watches, and she's then got real nasty. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't consider her prophetess. I haven't talked to my aunt in like 4 or 5 years. I don't plan to talk to her. I was being shown in that dream, it was a warning. And I was being shown that her religious voice cannot judge or define me. That she may be spiritually blind to my true assignment. And that someone or that some who present as righteous in public carry a private darkness or operate from a spirit of accusation. And under divine law, no accusing spirit may hold authority over a sealed one. I am sealed. I've been sealed. I know I'm sealed. So the dream didn't say your aunt is evil and you're better. It said don't fear their condemnation, for you are mine. Even in your ignorance I kept you. That's what the Most High said. No human, no family may strip that from me, period. Point blank. Not even my so-called friend Jezebel. So they sit up in accusation. They sit up in pure, like some sort of sense of like they have some sense of priority in your life, and they don't have that. I know who I am. I know that I'm sealed, and you have to walk in that knowledge, and you have to know that yourself and be prepared, because you will face it. You're going to get it. You're going to get it from your family. You're going to get it from friends. But when you know who you are, and you are rising up, and you are and the Most High God is undoing your tongue, and you are breaking those generational curses and doing the rituals to break those curses in your bloodline, watch what happens. Untying yourself from mixture, watch what happens. Watch what happens. Like, there's certain spells you can't do. Like, people keep saying, stick them in the freezer. Can't do that in Sanctified Hoodoo. So it's a calling of unlearning a lot of stuff that you've learned. It's dismissing people from your life. It's, how can I say? Some people, you don't owe any explanation for not picking up their phone call, because they could have easily picked up a phone and came to you, but that's a spirit of cowardice. I call someone like that a coward. A coward would get online and decree and spew a thing, but they won't approach the person that is aimed at. That's passive aggressiveness, and that person doesn't have the Spirit of God within them. The Spirit of God doesn't rest upon that person. That's the spirit of Jezebel. That's the spirit of Jezebel. Period. And so that's how I found out who I am. That's the origin of my gifts. It is a spiritual inheritance and lineage, and it's in my blood. And it's who I am, and I want to apologize for it. I walk uncovered for purpose. They covered their power for survival, and I walk uncovered for purpose, and I will continue to do so. I will continue to work the roots and heal people. I have the gift of healing, and more than just a root. I honor my position. I don't sit anywhere and think I'm higher than someone else, because I'm not. I remain humble. I work for the Most High God. Yeah. And that's it. I don't serve any other deity, any other God. I don't invoke any other God. I work with clean ancestors only. And I have to approach God first before I can even talk to that clean ancestor. I have to ask God if I can talk to him. And if I can, to send them through. That's how I work. But, yeah. So maybe the next one we're going to work on, the next teaching, condemnation versus correction, and what that looks like. And maybe work on an altar practice for releasing accusation under divine law, like I did. Discerning the righteous voice from religious judgment under divine law. Maybe that will be our next teachable moment there. And we'll see how that goes. And like I said, that's probably, we're going to talk about how Western Christianity has separated from its Hebraic roots as well. And why Sanctified Hoodoo is God's work. We're going to go through that scripture as well as on our next teaching. So yes, guys, let's focus up on what Sanctified Hoodoo we do not do, and what we do, and how the mainstream church Christianity often misunderstands what we do. Okay? And how we can speak to churchgoers. So that'll be our next one. So the condemnation versus correction, discerning a righteous voice from religious judgment under divine law. I'm a spirit walker of the Jaguar path, y'all. That's one of my names. I know who I am. So I hope that you guys enjoy this little introduction and origins to my gifts, and how the Most High God is calling to the matriarchs of every family to rise up and take your position, take your mantle, do the rituals, break these covenants that you were brought under that you didn't have anything to do with. Separate yourself from the clean and unclean, and that clean and unclean ancestors as well. Get out the mixture. For those that this message is for, you know who you are, like I said at the beginning. And at the beginning, I said, and who this teaching was for. And I'll speak it again at closing. I speak under divine law. This message is not mine. It is governed, sealed, and delivered only to those lawfully assigned. And until next time, guys, Sanctified Hoodoo out.